Don't forget that we're offering 2 free resources from our favorite positive reinforcement dog trainer, Irit Bloom of the Sophisticated Dog. Simply go to thisispawprint.com/ask and sign up. This is Paw Print, an animal rescue community, episode 44. I'm Harold Ree.
And I'm Nancy Ree.
Breaking news from the Paw Print news desk, Tebow has been adopted. We started fostering Tebow in late December, and about 4.5 months later, he finally got adopted. It was wonderful to see him go from a pretty reactive dog to a dog that really warmed up from the beginning to Nancy, later on to our son Dylan, and then finally to me. If you want to see some wonderful photos of Tebow, we'll call him Tebow the Wonder Dog, go to our show notes at thisispawprint.com/44. That's the number 44. Let's talk about the origin of the name Tebow, because people are going to think we're either University of Florida fans or Denver Bronco fans, and we're none of those.
Some of you might immediately think of Tim Tebow, the football player. However, it kind of had nothing to do with him. At the first shelter, his name was Kramer, and I just didn't like that name. So I was thinking, I don't know, Tebow was tiny, but he kind of had this bulldog personality. And so I was thinking T-Bone. But then I thought that might accentuate the macho personality. So then I thought T-Bone, Tebow. Or it might be that when I said T-Bone, my son thought I was saying Tebow. So anyway, so we settled on Tebow. Since Tim Tebow is a man of faith, I thought, faith would help Tebow get adopted. So Tebow is what is known in the rescue community as a shelter transfer. Sometimes when a dog has a hard time getting adopted at one shelter, the dog can get transferred to another shelter, gets a new start and a new environment, and usually it works out very well. So Tebow was in a his first foster home, and then he came back to his shelter. He wasn't doing very well at the shelter. Some dogs just feel very confined and they get restless and sometimes they get aggressive. They reached out to another animal shelter. I offered to foster him. All I knew about Tebow before I went to pick him up was that he was anxious. We can work with anxiety. And at this point, we had fostered over 50 dogs. I felt like we had enough experience. So I thought, we'll give it a try. Anyway, so when I went to pick him up, he was this 13-pound cream-colored Chihuahua. So I saw a picture of him before I went there, and he just looked adorable. He had these huge black eyes. He was cream-colored, and he looked pretty adorable. So I figured, how bad can he be? So I went over to pick him up. He was on the ground, and I approached him, and he was so cute. I instinctively reached down to say hello, and he almost bit my head off. So I knew right away, okay, yeah, I got to go slow with him. They gave me a chance to back out, but I thought, you know what? You can't always foster dogs that are easy. So we brought him home. We had a hard time even getting Tebow into the crate to transport him. Just putting him in the crate, it took about, a good 5 to 10 minutes. I drove back to pick up my son from the doctor's office. I wanted to check in on Tebow, so I looked in and he seemed quiet enough. So I opened the gate to the crate, and all of a sudden he was my best friend. He came up to me, he wanted to cuddle up to me, and so I was a little confused. So I figured maybe, he's just slow to warm.
The thing I remember about him was he definitely had a Jekyll and Hyde personality. He could definitely be very cuddly, and that was wonderful about him. But from my perspective, you couldn't really touch him. You almost needed to ask permission, and he would never grant it. So even with me, probably it was only until the very end that he even allowed me to pick him up, scratch his back, that kind of thing. He didn't really enjoy being around me. Instead, it was sort of the opposite, where he would choose you, and then he would just either cuddle up to you or get on your lap, and you would just kind of sit there, but you couldn't really interact with him because he would get mad. The last thing I'll say is that, to me, he's our podcast dog. Nacho is really my podcast partner. That's one of our dogs. So Nacho is my podcast partner. He sits on my lap as I'm editing and putting stuff together. But Tebow, in so many ways, is our podcast dog, maybe our mascot, because it was really after we started fostering Tebow that we started Paw Print. And now that we're already 44 episodes in, Tebow has now finally gone off to his permanent family. So Tebow will always remember you for being our podcast dog.
We learned a lot through our experience fostering Tebow because at first we couldn't quite figure out why he was so anxious, and he was also nippy. He bit me a couple of times, although I was kind of asking for it. So within our family, he was attached to me immediately. He was hostile to my son and also Harold. So we just assumed that maybe he had been abused or neglected by a man. So he just instinctively reacted to men more. There were about 2 adopters interested in Tebow, and it just didn't work out.
We gave plenty of warning to them too.
Yeah. So then we wanted to get an expert opinion and evaluation of Tebow's personality to see what might be causing his anxiety. So we had a dog trainer come and evaluate him, and she really opened up our eyes because we thought that Tebow was a hostile dog. And she said, no, he's not hostile because he will come up to you. He'll even sit on your lap, but then after a certain point, he'll get growly and he doesn't want you to touch him anymore. So he wants everything on his own terms. So she labeled him as a control freak, and that kind of unlocked the key to his personality. She advised us to, just for a while, just ignore him and see what happens.
He really did want to be held by Nancy, and he wanted to follow Nancy around, but Nancy would not give in to his pleas for, hold me, until he just kind of settled down. From there, that I think really did build up maybe a better relationship.
Up till we got Tebow, the longest foster we had was 3 months. I was expecting to keep Tebow like as long as a year or maybe even longer. Everything was working against him. At the shelters, they had a ton of Chihuahuas, which made it even harder for a dog like Tebow to get an interest of an adopter. We got a call saying, someone's interested and this might be it. I was kind of desperate to try anything. So anyway, I called them up. And I actually ended up talking to the husband. I talked to him at length and I described Tebow's personality. They had a rescue cat for over a year. Neither of them had had a dog before. So they would have, been first-time dog owners. So right off the bat, I thought, oh Lord, is this going to work? But, as I said, we were desperate to find a home for Tebow because I just felt like it may never happen. I described Tebow as best I could, and they were still interested. So then I think it was like a day or 2 later, I brought Tebow over to their house. He seemed to relax after a while. I just chatted with the couple.
You let him stay with them, right?
I gave them a chance to try him out over the weekend to see if it might be a good match. At this point, I was about 70% prepared for them to say no and have to take Tebow back. But I got no phone call. I called Friday night to see how it was going, and she said, it was going really well. And she actually had a daughter who doesn't live with them, but would be the person house sitting for them if ever they were away. But anyway, her daughter was afraid of dogs. So this was kind of a source of concern for me because Tebow was such an anxious dog and could kind of get growly. Even her daughter was nervous at first, but she became friends with Tebow, and that it was going very well. So I naturally was delighted, and I said, well, I'll call you Monday morning, and then you can make the decision whether you want to adopt. So anyway, on Monday, I gave them a call. And the husband basically said, try taking Tebow away from my wife because she'll never let him go. So he attached himself to the wife pretty instantly.
But he gets along with the husband too.
Yeah. He has been nippy at the husband, but, they know his personality and they were willing to work with it. Mm-hmm. I really appreciate it because these are the sort of dream adopters that a rescue organization hopes for, because they don't expect everything to be easy from day one. They expect to put in some work to train the dog and to figure out the personality of the dog So, that's what they were willing to do.
Yeah.
So I really appreciated that.
We want to say good luck to you, Tebow. We miss you and we love you. And in case you're wondering, right after Tebow got adopted, Nancy and I, we've already fostered 3 dogs and 2 of them have already been adopted. So the fostering goes on and on. If you want to learn more about today's episode and see some great photos of Tebow the Wonder Dog, go to our show notes at thisispawprint.com/44. If you want to meet me and Nancy over social media, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. Look for This Is Paw Print, all one word. If you want to listen to more episodes of Paw Print, you can find us on iTunes, SoundCloud, Google Play Music, and starting a couple weeks ago, YouTube. You can go to YouTube straight from thisispawprint.com/YouTube. Finally, we just want to remind you 2 free resources from Irete Bloom. Go to thisispawprint.com/ask to sign up. We want to thank all of you for listening in. Hopefully our podcast inspires you to take action. Thanks for telling your friends and family about our show. Remember that you spread a positive message of love and peace by saving an animal. Have a great day, everyone, and see you next time on Paw Print.
Is a production of EVER Education.
You can't handle the truth.